Hello. Welcome to, well, actually, I should say first, live from Denver, it's Friday night. Hey, everybody. I'm assuming all is well here and you are hearing us. Yeah, it's all good. Hey, everybody. Very excited to be here this week for another edition of Critical Conversations with My Critics. Hey, guys, so happy you are here. As always, I am joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
And we are very happy to have her here. And she can butt in anytime she wants on my monologues and nonsense.
Okay.
Because I am full of nonsense. Hey, everybody. So, what do you think the topic will be? Should we take bets? It's wide open. I am agendaless this evening. I am topicless. And, an agendaless Chris is a dangerous Chris because you never know what I'm going to go on and go into and start rambling on about. So I definitely encourage you to call in at 984-214-4154. I tweeted out earlier today, actually I think like an hour or something ago. I'm just constantly amazed. We've been doing this show for well over a year now. And pretty much almost every week we've been doing it. It's been a lot of fun. You guys have been awesome. And yet, I kind of expected that by now I would have gotten into at least one heated argument with somebody on the phone. And it just hasn't happened. And I'm, simultaneously happy that I am running a show that is civil and that I get to model the behavior that I talk about in terms of being tolerant and listening and being open to receiving, differing points of view about things. I'm very happy to be able to do that, but I think I'm a little disappointed that nobody's called in with some real hate for me yet.
What's going to happen now?
Yeah, I know, right? 'Cause, but I should, this could be one of those, careful what you wish for sort of thing,
yeah.
Shelton, shut up, you didn't know when you had it so good. But anyway, I see you guys throwing out some questions here and stuff. We will definitely hit up on those. First, I actually put a little agenda together now for our show that I've got written down here on the table so I can refer to our notes and hopefully not miss a beat on how we've sort of organically evolved the show. And one of those points, of course, is that I'm going to start at the beginning of the show here with a quote from Melissa, and she has selected out a few. So
my quote
would you like to...
So we can, talk about mental illness. That's usually what these quotes are going to be about. So this one, you may not all agree, people that have gone through depression, but I kind of found it interesting. I know sometimes I've felt this way. So this one's from Henry Rollins, and he said, "I'll never forget how the depression and loneliness felt good and bad at the same time. Still does."
Interesting quote, huh?
Yeah. It's like, I think what he means by good is not like, or at least for me, it's not like necessarily like, great, I want this to happen all the time. But there is sort of I don't know, there's something kind of interesting and sort of beautiful about the darkness, It's awful, but there's still something about it,
Yes. She read this to me before the show, and I thought, that hasn't really been my experience, but I'm wide open to other people's experiences on this, and I'm interested in how it feels good and bad at the same time. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, let me repeat it because Penny didn't hear it completely, so maybe some other people didn't. So, "I'll never forget how the depression and loneliness felt good and bad at the same time. Still does."
Okay.
So there's the quote. Hopefully you heard it better that time. I guess there's been times where I've been really down about something, really depressed. Like there was a South Park episode a really long time ago. I think it was Butters. He falls in love with this girl and then they break up, and I think it was Butters, but it was one of the characters breaks up with this girl, and Stan, I think, broke up with his girl, and he's so upset about it, and he doesn't understand why the other guy is so happy, even though he just got dumped. And he was like, well, there's kind of a beauty in sadness. You know, like it's not all awful.
Interesting. Interesting. Oh, and awesome. I mean, I'm curious about what you guys out there think about this too, and your experiences with this. I think I can understand it if I parallel it to how some people experience and how I have. And don't get me wrong. Don't I'm not going down some BDSM line here, but there is. Because that's not my thing. But I do understand, in a way, how pain can be perceived as pleasure by some people. And I'm not saying that's this exactly, but that's the only way I can put it into a context that makes sense to me, is sometimes that pain or that experience of that is so bad it's kind of weirdly good in a way. And it doesn't sound right, it doesn't come out right, it's definitely an emotional thing, but yeah, it's weird. Emotions can be very, very odd to describe, I think, sometimes, you know. Beautiful sadness.
Like
yeah,
I guess it's kind of like when you have grief, there's something, it's awful. You wish that person was still here, but then there's a beauty to it because it gets you to think about them and remember them, and, you know, bring up things maybe you hadn't thought about in a long time, stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, and also maybe another way of talking about it or describing it might be that sometimes by experiencing the very worst of the emotional band, or in the depths of the awful sadness of depression that can occur sometimes, maybe one of the things, at least for me, I think, when you start turning the corner and coming out of that, or even when you're in the depths of it, you can experience this sort of a perception or a memory or an idea of how good things can be, how close you can be with people, how close you can be with nature or the world, even sometimes, or reality. And you don't necessarily appreciate that except in the highs and the lows. You know, the lows, you can appreciate it because it's so far away, but it's so real that it's not there. And then when, of course, it's happening and it's really extreme, you're really into the good side of that spectrum, I guess. That I can understand that. I could see how that could be that way in terms of bringing some clarity to the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It makes me think about that Maniac show we watched with Emma Stone and
oh yeah, and Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill, yeah. I was thinking Judah, and I was like, that's not right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, there you go. Somebody asked about how we met. Oh, and by the way, she did say Henry Rollins, as in Black Flag. Yes, as in
Henry Rollins.
As in Henry Rollins has got to be one of the most real and from the heart kind of speakers. Sometimes he's done a few public speaking things that have been absolutely blow away. I mean, really, really blew me away. And of course, I love Liar, that song. Liar.
Yeah.
I just love that song. I think I'm so sweet and innocent because I'm a liar. Yeah, I love that song. Yeah, Henry Rollins is pretty cool. So so that was a quote I wanted to think about a little bit.
He did some stand-up too that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, he's quite an entertainer. He's quite a good guy. Okay, so there we go.
Oh,
yes.
How we met.
Oh, yes. So I wanted you to tell the story.
Okay, so there's a place, it's moved locations now, but there's a place in Denver called the Secular Hub. And it's for people that are not religious, that want to come together and hang out and still have community. And so that's where we originally met. We kind of knew each other, and then we went out to lunch with some friends, and he Facebook friended me, and then we didn't really talk. And then a friend of ours came out from Kansas because she's a stand-up. she invited both of us to the show. Well, I think she was staying with Chris, but she invited both of us to the show. And then he started liking me and everything. And I had just gotten out of another relationship like maybe a month before. And so, the next day we were at the hub, he asked me out, and then I was kind of like, well, I don't know, I just kind of want to be friends right now. I just got out of a relationship and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, okay, let's just be friends. And then we still, we hung out and be
friends.
Yeah. And then we hung out a lot, and I ended up liking him back, and now here we are. That's right. Yeah, this is how liberals meet. Yeah, this is how atheists meet.
Just check and see in the comments here. It's so funny. Yeah, that was it. And then we just started dating and going from there. And I guess it was, I gave myself a good long time for us to date before I popped the question.
Yeah.
I think it was after a year I knew. I was sure. Anyway, yeah, so that's and that was moving slow. That was going snail's pace for me, because in the Sea Org, of course, you guys know, I think it was about oh God, was it 3 weeks? Yeah, it wasn't 3 months.
Wow.
I don't think it was 3 months, and I was married.
Oh, okay.
It was about a month and a half of courtship, I think, between having met her and getting married. So it was pretty crazy.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, pretty nuts. Okay, so we have not checked in with Seven yet, and he is our Trinity. He is our third Holy Seven there. So there he is, sitting up on Mel's desk there, and sort of admiring
Chilling.
me. Yeah, sort of chillaxing there.
He likes to come up on my desk and visit.
He does. That's his usual place, and he wasn't sleeping this time. I think he had just woken up from a nap, and we were getting him here. And there we go.
Yeah.
So
he actually has his eyes open.
Yeah, he's just like this the whole time this week. He's just kind of sitting there relaxing, not really doing a whole lot of anything. The camera didn't really bug him. It was actually right up in his face this time, but he was okay with it. So there you go. So there's our little bundle of furry love. So hashtag 7 the Wonder Cat. And aw, 7. As far as how did I pop the question, I actually we did it on YouTube. You can go back and can go back in my critical Q&A shows, and I did a live show, and at the end of the show I called her over and popped the question. So it was fun. Henry Rollins again. My favorite Henry Rollins story is him telling a story about David Bowie. There's a whole story he has about David Bowie that is quite good. That's worth looking up and hearing. Yeah,
and I see DJ's comment here about Hemingway cat. Yeah, I know what those are. Those are like the 6-toed cats.
Oh, what are those? I didn't know what that reference is.
Yeah, the Hemingway had all these 6-toed cats.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
He actually collected
polydactyl, I think they're called, or something.
What?
Yeah.
6. Wow, this is new to me.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that he had more than one cat, much less many 6-toed cats. Okay, my whole world is being rocked right now. I'm gonna have to adjust to this whole new reality of Hemingway and his 6-toed cats.
Yeah. My friend Javi that I used to have had a cat that was like that. And then she had a baby that was like that. It was adorable.
Huh. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, folks, I'm going to throw it out there. It's 984-214-4154. The floor is open for anything y'all want to call in and talk about. I will go on a little bit of a thing here because we have been watching this last week. We've been watching some really interesting stuff on Netflix, and we really got into all the narco dramas. And we just finished watching all the seasons of Narcos Mexico, and we've been watching Drug Lords and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And looking into that whole thing, and that is a fascinating view of how badly, how bungled, how wrong, our national response to the drug problem has been. Mm-hmm. It still is in many ways. And what a deep, layered, difficult topic it is. I mean, just, if you watch those shows from the viewpoint of, America good, Mexico bad, or America good, Colombia bad, or something like that, it's, you can have that kind of two-layered view of the world, sort of binary view of the world, I suppose, but it's really not a very accurate view of reality. And it is it's really eye-opening to see all the forces at play in these other countries that we consider almost third world countries, but very below us, very, when I grew up in the 80s, it was very much those guys were bad people and it was all bad and we're good. And I went into the Sea Org with this kind of mentality of us good, them bad. And so I am talking about this a little bit because it was also that way for me with 9/11. And 9/11, of course, we're about to have the anniversary of that tomorrow. And
20 years.
Yeah, 20 years, right? And I don't know about you guys, but I remember exactly where I was when I heard about 9/11. I was in the shower. I was in the Sea Org, and I was up on the 6th floor of the shower room. It's a multi-person shower room up on the 6th floor of the main building. And I was up there. I think it was what day was 9/11? Was it a Friday?
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday. Somehow I'd been up late the night before, which was a Monday, I guess. So I was getting up a little late, and then it all went down. And yeah, not too late actually, not too late. It was about 7 a.m. here when it happened, right? It was about 9 a.m. in East Coast time.
Yeah, and I was in college at the time. That was my second year of college, the first semester, and I had gone to class. It was a really early morning class, like 8 o'clock or something in the morning. And I remember they were like, in the middle of the class, someone came in and said, one of the towers has been hit. And we were like, oh, what's going on? That's so weird. And then we got out of class and another person said that the second tower had been hit.
Yep.
And we it was just confusion. We were like, what's going on? And then my mom lives in New York, and I was trying to get a hold of her all day, and all I had, this was like 2001, so all I had was a calling card and the phone in my dorm room to call her. And there was this goofy message that was like, the tornado in your area is making it impossible to get through right now, which I'm like, okay, the tornado. But eventually I did get a hold of my mom, but it took like all day long, and it was scary, like I just remember that it was,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have any connections or anybody to contact. My whole family is West Coast, so there was none any fear or any concern about that. And being in the Sea Org, One Track Mind asked, did they still make you work? Yeah, absolutely. There's no rest for the wicked in the Sea Org. And
there's no rest for the theater people either.
You worked as well?
Yeah, well, because that was when I was in school and I was in the theater program, and we still had rehearsal that night. She said that, if certain people wanted to, they could get out of it, but, most people showed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I just went to post. I mean, there wasn't, and there was, in the Sea Org, you don't have TVs, right? You have a TV sometimes in the main mess while you're eating. There's sometimes a big screen TV, mainly when there were big football games or sporting events, they would put the TV in there so we could kind of watch that, Super Bowl, stuff like that. But it's not like anybody was, that was just during meal times you got to sit and watch the TV there. Otherwise, there wasn't really a whole lot of TVs around. And L. Ron Hubbard had actually written an issue that forbade personal ownership of TVs on the base. And there were people who, decided they were going to have TVs anyway. And eventually I was one of those. But that was, actually the TV was just a little CD player.
Oh.
I never really had a TV in the Sea Org. But anyway, my point is, over in data, where in the management unit where I worked, there was an office called the Data Bureau, and they had a TV. And so they had the news on, and they were monitoring what was going on with the planes and in New York. And I was in Los Angeles, and it was awful far away, New York. I'd never been there, didn't have anything to do with the East U.S. And in West U.S., we were not concerned with or directly overseeing or in any way managing or regulating what was going on with Scientology in the East U.S. So it wasn't that it didn't have anything to do with us or something. I'm just saying we were not in, direct communication with the people on the ground, or didn't have really an understanding of what was going on over there. We were just, get back to work, right? You got to do your work. And any sort of that sort of black and white thinking I was talking about earlier, for me, manifested really strongly on 9/11, because I was able to just sort of, and I don't see this as a good thing, but I was able to sort of just shut the whole thing off and just go do my work and not think about it. And as crazy as that sounds, like, I now know how absolutely insane that is to be able to do that. But that's what almost all of us did. There were people who were affected, who were concerned, who were like, oh my God, this is really awful. But I didn't really get the full brunt of it when I was there. I was much more concerned with stats and the orgs and getting my orders complied with. And now, here's this whole disastrous situation, which was just another example, as far as we were concerned in the Sea Org. This was just another example of how we weren't working fast enough, because it was on us. But it's a weird thing. I'm going to try to get this. I've been thinking about this for days, trying to figure out how to communicate it, and I still don't really know if I have it well enough to be able to get this across well. But for me, 9/11 was, it wasn't very real, because I was so in this bubble world that the outside world was just bad. And so 9/11 was just another reason why it was bad. And that's kind of how I thought about the outside world at that time. And then, in this really kind of horrible way, I will say, we then started wanting to use it to our advantage to leverage people to do more Scientology faster. Which, it was not nefarious. It was the idea that this was the only thing that was solving these problems. This was the only thing that was going to solve the problems of the world and solve the war and criminality. And 9/11 was the ultimate, the epitome of war and criminality and terrorism and awfulness. And so we didn't feel like we needed to go get all the details and bask in the awfulness of it. We needed to get our nose on the grindstone and get to it, because we weren't working hard enough or fast enough, because look at what's going on in the big wide world out there. And it was a shadow world. It's like it was a shadowy, vague kind of world, because I was literally working in a basement. So I wasn't even seeing the sun for most hours of the day, much less outside, much less getting into the media, much less finding out what was going on in the big wide world. So I had a really insular, isolated experience of 9/11, and it really took years of going, and then went down the conspiracy rabbit hole. So then my understanding of 9/11 was it was an inside job, and it was all, orchestrated by Bush, and the towers were brought down with explosives, and it's all going back to the Rockefeller and the Sykes and all this other crap, right? And FEMA camps and, the government, and you can't trust any of them. So I was all the way down into that. If you took a snapshot of me a few years after 9/11, that's what I was doing, and that's where my head was at as a Sea Org member. So so I don't know that I really appreciated until a few years after I got out of the Sea Org in 2012 and really started getting my head around the big wide world and what really goes on in that I started reframing or recontextualizing 9/11 in a more accurate, from a more, kind of accurate perspective, and seeing all the facts of it and diving into the politics, reading The Looming Tower by Lawrence Wright, which was the book he got a Pulitzer Prize for before he wrote Going Clear. He wrote The Looming Tower, and it's right there on my shelf. It's brilliant analysis of how 9/11 happened and the aftermath of it. And I learned a ton from reading that book and then diving into other Middle Eastern history and Islamic history and stuff like that. So long-winded explanation, but that's kind of where I was coming from with 9/11, and I thought it was worth maybe commenting on because it was a real huge example, maybe more so than any other example I can give you guys, of just how isolated and insular my worldview was as a Sea Org member.
Yeah, I mean, it was different for me because I couldn't be insulated from it. I mean, my mom had worked in the towers and quit like about 5 or 6 months before 9/11. So there's always like, oh God, she hadn't quit. And there was also like, I had just visited out there that summer. So it was kind of terrifying. And, I have family that lived in New York. My godmother's husband is a NYPD police officer. He was going to the towers every day, cleaning up what was left behind and everything. And
wow,
it was a different experience, and I couldn't be insulated from it. It's like, I remember I couldn't get on a plane to New York for like a year. I just, and I would usually go there all the time because my mom was living out there, and I couldn't do it. I was just too scared about it. And it's kind of an irrational fear, but still I had it. And yeah, and then I did get into some of the conspiracy theories too, but it was still always a much more emotional reaction for me. It was like, but
wow,
yeah,
wow. We are live, by the way. I
Yeah.
saw somebody comment in the comic. I heard Chris Shelton doesn't do live. I do live all the time. I do probably about once every 4 or 5 weeks. I do a live Q&A show on Sundays. Is kind of how it's timed out. And then we do this every week. And yeah, we're live right now. You can call in and talk to us and everything. Okay, and in fact, let's go ahead and just since we've sort of covered some 9/11 stuff, yeah, let's check back in with 7.
Woo.
Ah, there he is. OT7.
Yeah.
I do love that. I think that's so funny. Such a little cutie, this guy.
Yeah.
Aww. All right, so there's our second view of 7 Cam for this week.
Yeah.
I have been watching, we've been watching this documentary on 9/11 and the war on terror over the last, and what's been going on over the last 20 years with this. And I guess I wanted to, since we have the time, I wanted to comment on the fact that it feels in a lot of ways, I got into Scientology, I spent 27 years in it, and the day I got out, I was right back in the position I was when I left, as far as what I needed to do to go up the bridge, and as far as, the church regarded me and stuff. They declared me a little bit later, but, when I left the Sea Org, I was in the same place as I was when I left. And I can't help but feel that in many ways, the last 20 years have put us right back to where we were 20 years ago. Like here we are leaving Afghanistan now.
And what's changed, yeah.
And what's changed, exactly. What have we accomplished? What have we done? I mean, yeah, we took Osama bin Laden out. That happened. It took way too long, but it happened. But could somebody else, arrange such a thing again? Of course they could. And Have we given a whole lot of people reason to? Yeah, we kind of have. I mean, we bungled Afghanistan and Iraq so badly.
Yeah.
And I don't say all this just to be critical of America, just for the sake of being critical. I'm really concerned about how our country's position in the world and how we use the power that we have and how we throw it around. Sometimes we wield that power in very, very beneficial ways. Sometimes we do things that are really amazing on the world stage. And often you don't hear about a lot of those things. There's all kinds of aid things and benefits and work that we do, dams we build, houses we build, stuff we do, infrastructure we try to put together in other countries. And that's all good. But then you look at the bad and you're like, damn, some of that bad's really bad. Some of that's pretty bad. Like I don't know how somebody in Afghanistan would ever trust an American ever again for any reason, or have anything to want to do with America.
Yeah, I mean, this documentary we've been watching, they basically pointed out that we didn't really have a plan for Afghanistan. We've just been sending troops over there. We didn't think it out first.
Exactly.
We just send people over there and that's it.
Exactly. I don't know. I get that. I don't have the view that this was all some nefarious plot,
No.
that 9/11 was an inside job, that it's all some big conspiracy. I look at international relations and things that happen on the world stage as very, very, not random, but definitely not simple.
Yeah.
Remember, countries don't have morality. Countries don't have friends. Countries have interests. Nations have interests, and those interests change. And we see over the time when Russia was in Afghanistan, for example, that it was in our interest to ally with, the Taliban and Al Qaeda and the other forces that were there to kick Russia out. And then our interests change. And now the guys that we were arming and helping are now our enemies, or at least are not our friends anymore. And then things went from bad to worse to really worse. So you watch that chain of events, and I don't know for me, it's not ideological. I don't look at that through a political lens and go, oh, Bush, because he was a Republican, he did blah, or because Dick Cheney was right-leaning, he did blah. I don't look at it that way. I look more at their personalities, because that's me. I'm a psych guy. I think about people that way. But I know that we have to look beyond personalities and beyond individuals when we're talking about things that go on the national stage. And we try to understand these things in terms of personalities, because it's easier for us to represent all of our problems or issues or countries by an individual. Our president is usually the one who gets the brunt of it, good and bad, right and wrong, and it's just not a very realistic look at how things actually play out and how things go. But the history of and the documented history of 9/11 and the aftermath of that, in terms of Afghanistan and then Iraq and then back to Afghanistan. That's all very well documented. This is not. I don't think it's any big opinion piece, to say we kind of screwed up. I don't think that's an ideological, controversial statement particularly. But I know a lot of people might have problems with that. Whatever. I just thought I'd comment on it because I don't see that we've particularly as a nation or as our government. I don't see that we have learned our lesson from what happened there. We haven't reevaluated our planning or our programs. As somebody mentioned earlier, the Patriot Act is still active. We still got this massive surveillance state thing going on. And you go, well, you have to have that if you want to have the level of security. But is it all necessary, and how far do we need to push our rights out of bounds? How far do we need to give over for some of these things? How much privacy do we have to give up?
Right.
It seems that as I've been watching this play out over the last 30 years, it's been more and more and more intrusive, less and less and less in terms of individual rights when it comes to the internet, using the internet, even being on the internet. Just to be here, you have to, engage in all this. You have to give over all your secrets. All right, we got a couple folks in the queue.
All
Excellent.
right.
So let's go ahead and pick them up. All right. First call, Marion.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear us?
Yes, I have bad internet. So, but I just when Melissa was talking about 911 and where you were and what you were doing, it just made me think about back then, and I was teaching school in an elementary school where a lot of the parents, 40% of our students were international students, and how they handled it. And I don't know, I think things were different then. We didn't do anything special. They all got on the bus at the end of the day and went home. No one ever said one word about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, afterwards, of course, we didn't know either. They never told us what was going on. The teachers, no one knew.
Wow.
We didn't know. We were like in this insulated little place,
Yep.
And they all got on the bus and they all went home. And you think, well, gee, maybe their mom and dad didn't come home that night. I don't know. But it was a strange time for sure. But I wanted to ask you about the radicalization that's taken place since then on, I don't know, it seems almost cult-like, both the left and the right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watch the news and everything, I just wanted to ask you what your feelings were on that. It's almost cult-like, to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And what I'll rephrase it a little bit by saying it's extremism ramped up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of and as far as how I think about it or look at it, I think about it, from a psychological perspective, right, and sociological. So I look at the fact that, like 9/11 happens, and it is a major, major attack, right? It's like Pearl Harbor all over again, except it's right in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of America absolutely flummoxed, absolutely blown away. Nobody really thought it was coming or saw it coming. I mean, there were people who saw it coming who should have done their jobs, but that's the very small circle of people. The average American had no idea. And that raised our tension level, our fear and anxiety in the world, by notches, the dial turned up to 11 for a good long time.
Yeah.
And when we're in that kind of, oh my God, fear-based fight or flight, we have to act, and the rage that comes after when you realize, oh my God, thousands of people have just died because of some terrorists on the other side of the world. Well, we got to go deal with that. We got to go get those guys. This is not okay. We can't let this stand. And everybody was rightly outraged and very righteous about, payback time. And that carried on for years. And through that, we had political division, because then we had a regime change from Republican to Democrat when Obama came in. And we had a housing crisis then hit us. Everybody. I mean, who wasn't affected by that? Very few people, right?
Right.
So that ramps up the anxiety and the financial stress and strain even more. And then on top of that, right in the middle of all this mix, Facebook, YouTube, social media, Twitter hits.
Yep.
Right? And we start talking to each other, and we are riled up, and we are pissed, and we are anxious. And I think that's a combination of perfect storm material to drive us to either end of the ideological spectrum, as it seems to have done, where we're really riled up now, to the point that
it seemed like it really, and it seemed like it really strengthened the Christian radicals.
Yep, big time.
It really did.
Yep.
I mean, I feel I sometimes it upsets me how isolated you are as a Jew or Muslim in this country. It seems like you're either going to be Christian or you're not American.
Yep. There is a strain of that.
That's the way I feel lately.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that's for real. That's true. It's not all Christians by a long shot, but there are a lot of very.
Oh no, I not at all. But
Yeah.
but I just feel like that sometimes when I see things on Facebook and stuff.
Yep.
You know, you're either going to be believe in Jesus or you aren't American.
That's right.
You're just not.
That's right. Yeah, mom, apple pie, and
it's
Jesus.
funny to me because there were Jews. I mean, look at Rhode Island. I mean, that's the first synagogue is in Rhode Island, and it was during colonial times. I mean, there's been Jews here forever.
Of course.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Of course, exactly. But we love to other people when we've got to find an enemy, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are some groups that are very full of themselves. And like I was saying about when I was in the Sea Org earlier, you know, it was easy for us to rile each other up and know, not think, not have an opinion, but know that we in the Sea Org were the only people who were doing anything helpful or beneficial to anybody in the big wide world. And the reason I stress all this is because I believe that the extreme Christian nationalists and Dominion Christians and these kind of deep extremist Christians are in the exact same headspace I used to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah. Well, I'll let someone else have a chance to chat with you, but I thank you both for what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for calling in.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. And we have Kevin. All right, let's pick this up again. There we go. Hello.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, Kevin,
Hello.
going good. Welcome to the show.
Hey, so this mandate that the president put out, what's your thought on that?
Yeah,
Oh, he's
thoughts
looking at
on the
me?
mandate. Yeah. What do you want to say, babe?
I mean, it's a complicated issue. It does raise constitutional questions because, you know, can the president really tell businesses what to do? He is. I feel like he's giving them a choice. So it's, you know, the vaccine or testing all the time. So, you know, I'm kind of not sure where I stand yet on it, but I see kind of both sides of it. But I understand kind of where he's coming from because I think we're getting desperate to get people to get vaccinated.
Go ahead, Rick.
You know, and so I think they're getting a little crazier with what they're doing because they are in a corner not knowing what to do about how to get people vaccinated.
Yeah, it's a problem, that's for sure. What's your take on it, Kevin?
Well, you know, politically speaking, I'm a libertarian.
Okay.
But you know, I'm also a fan of scientific skepticism and critical thinking, Carl Sagan, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I know vaccines work. This, if it stands in the courts, because you know they're going to go to court over this.
Yep. Of course they are.
It will have a net positive benefit. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
Am I happy with the way it was brought about? No.
Right.
But could I see this coming? Yes. And did I want it to happen this way? Maybe not. Was it going to happen this way if we didn't take it upon ourselves to do the right thing? Yeah. And that's kind of the same way I think about gun control. You know, I'm a fairly big Second Amendment advocate, but I know there's people out there that don't think the same way that I do, and it's one of those things. The same with the vaccine stuff. You know, you either have to police yourself and be your brother's keeper, or someone's going to do it for you.
Exactly. And I think we're at a point, for the way I'm looking at it, I agree with what you just said. And I think that we are at a point where there is, from what I understood from how Biden gave his speech on this, it was with a degree of like, you know, God damn it, guys, you know, why, you know, what, it shouldn't have to come to this kind of thing.
No.
You know, because we've got.
If we were a more.
Mhm.
If we were a more, benevolent society, I guess, or I forget what the word that Ayn Rand used for that she was so whatever it was that she was so against, not objectivism, but if we cared
Ayn Rand's
more about other people,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I know it's not
big on
I
Ayn
forget
Rand.
what she called it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Objectivism
if
was
we were
her
more,
philosophy.
Yeah. That's not it. There's some I forget what it is, but anyway, if we were more caring about other people, aside from ourselves, it wouldn't maybe have to be this way as much.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think Ayn Rand sort of forwarded a level of individualism or self-sufficiency that was a little ridiculous, because it failed to acknowledge one's responsibility in society, the social contract. Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being self-sufficient and individualism, even rugged individualism, but you have to realize there's other people out there.
Exactly. That's the social contract.
So,
I'm all for people having, full their rights. I mean, I'm all about rights. I believe in bodily autonomy, including with vaccinations. If you don't want to get vaccinated, I don't really feel like I'm the guy, or anybody is a person who has the power to tie you down and vaccinate you. I don't think that's right. However,
no, but if you're not going to get it, you have to be okay with having certain stipulations put on you.
Exactly.
Consequences.
That's right.
I mean, you have to be okay with not being able to go into Walmart and having your groceries picked up at the curb or something like that.
That's right. You can expect.
And that's another thing I don't understand. I've never. It's not really related to. Well, it is related to the pandemic, but it's not really related to the vaccine mandate. I've never understood why somebody, especially somebody who believes in the rights of private businesses to do what they want, how anybody that says that could bitch at somebody, a store clerk or store owner, for asking them to put a mask on. I just don't understand that. That is hypocrisy to the max.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think we're on the same page, Kevin, in terms of social responsibilities, and the fact that, you have the right of bodily autonomy. You have the right to control what goes on, but you also then are going to have consequences, and some of those consequences could be being sequestered away from society, and that's just part of the picture. And somehow, these people want to have their cake and eat it too, and I don't think it works that way.
Well, again, comparing this to the gun rights stuff, I'm pretty far to the right as far as that goes. I'm more middle ground or left leaning when it comes to other stuff, but even then, the way I'm going to tie it in is, I wouldn't want a law, or I wouldn't want a mandate stating that, or I wouldn't want somebody saying, hey, you can't put up a no weapon sign in your business. We're not going to allow that.
Right. That's right.
That is, no. Yeah.
That's right.
Maybe I wouldn't, if somebody decided to do that, I wouldn't agree with it, but I can't say that they can't.
Exactly.
And and no one else can either.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right. And even though you've got the Second Amendment that says the right to, bear arms shall not be infringed upon, by the government, but not necessarily by your local general store.
You have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to be okay with that, just as you would have to be okay with not being able to, I don't know, go to football games or gather with more than your family.
You got it. That's exactly right. We don't get to just ignore situations like global pandemics and act like it's no big deal, not a problem, I'm fine, so what's the issue? We just can't have our heads in the sand that way. It just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Well, listen, I got some other calls coming in, so I'm going to let you go, but thank you very much for calling in.
Sure. Hey, thanks for chit-chatting.
Absolutely, man. Talk to you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's pick up on Adria here. She's been in the queue for a few minutes. Hello, Adria.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Melissa. Hey,
Hello.
Seven.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
So, I'm doing all right. And how are you?
Well, peachy keen. Happier now that I'm talking to you.
I can. Aw.
Aw.
All right. So, I have a situation that I'm in that I think involves what you were just discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also plays into the larger 9/11 picture when you take it down to an individual level.
Okay, what's that?
And that is, okay, so I live in a community, as most of us do, but in my community, it happens to be a apartment complex. So, you're kind of close to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then you get someone who just wants what they want, everyone else be damned. And that's why there are rules and regs and fines and this and that. Got it. Interesting thing, though, I have been running into people who are taking offense at, very polite, very, respectful, like, knock, knock, knock. Excuse me, could you please turn your music down a bit? Like, that sort of thing.
Oh,
and they're taking it to a whole nother level. Like, call the police. I can do whatever the fuck I want until 10 p.m.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm the president of the board, and they know that.
Wow.
So, needless to say, I've been having to craft some new rules and regs. Lovely, I know. So, I was wondering if maybe you could give some insight into people who have that sort of taking offense to, the slightest provocation, and maybe some insight on how to deal with that.
Okay. Yeah, tracking on that. The way I would go about dealing with some individual who was doing that with me or was treating me that way would be to try to kind of throw the dead fish on the table, right? Like, hey, man, what's up? You're really hostile to me every time I, talk to you. Clearly, I'm pissing you off. What's up? Tell me what's going on, right? See if you can get more from the person than just anger or ire. It's hard. It's hard to do that because the whole intention of being angry and cursing and being obscene and all that is to back you off, to back you away, to threaten or somehow put some kind of threat there, and so it's in a way it's a little bit calling the bluff, but not physically, not in a physical way. It's verbally, right? It's like, hey, man. I'm calling you out here. It's like, I get that you're pissed. I get you don't want to hear this, so you don't want to have this conversation. Whatever you think might communicate to that person, what is it that's pissing them off, so that they will then acknowledge you and your existence because they now see that you are paying attention to them and not just trying to impose your will upon them.
Right.
That's a first shot.
Opportunity to be.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, so thankfully I had the opportunity to be the bystander in one of the altercations because this is not the first one.
Yeah.
There've been a few.
Yeah.
And thankfully I got to be the mediator in one of them, and basically the person was feeling disrespected.
Right. There you go.
So apparently respect is a really big deal to this person.
Yeah.
But, we live in a community, therefore we need mutual respect.
Exactly. But you have sometimes you got to put the Band-Aid on, right? You got to acknowledge that this person feels excuse me, for the sake of fixing it and establishing a stronger or a better relationship, a calmer one, you have to acknowledge or put up with or deal with this person's issue, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. This is a fairly harmless one, right? Like, you're not respecting me.
Yeah.
I feel disrespected. Okay. In what way would you like me to address you, or how should we do this so that you don't feel that way again? Or how did I do that? I'm really sorry. It's obviously not what I intended to do. Let's acknowledge this and see if we can't move past it. You know, something like that, moving in that kind of direction. Obviously, the words that you use are going to be, you know, to fit this person you're talking to. But that kind of that's an approach I would try, you know.
Okay.
Because then you can put it past you.
I think.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's what we want. We just want to be a peaceful, happy community. We want to be good neighbors to each other. You know, that's the goal.
That's right.
And, you know, worldwide, that should be a goal too. You know, we learn to be good neighbors to one another.
That's right. And it used to be, I mean, just to sort of throw it out there, because from my understanding of how communities used to be before the internet and, you know, and phones and all that, is people would meet in person. They would go to each other's houses. They would knock on each other's doors. They would kind of get to know one another. And you learn in doing that not everybody gets along and not everybody wants to get along. And that's okay too, as long as they're still able to function in the culture or the society or the group, you know, in some in some fashion. They don't have to be enthusiastic members of the club, you know, in order to get along. And everybody kind of knew, oh, there was that guy at the end of the street, and you don't want to rile him up too much because he's kind of, you know, cantankerous. He's kind of, you know, he's got an attitude. And you learn to acknowledge that, but not let it be a barrier when it comes to communicating about essential or important things, like how we're gonna, you know, get along, or what the issues of the community are, you know.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be rainbows and butterflies, is what I'm trying to say. You can still, you know, it can still be that you don't like the guy, but at least there is a mutual understanding that you can relate to one another without yelling, screaming, or disrespecting each other, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that idea of asking, well, how can I address you, or how can we handle this in a way that you feel respected?
Exactly.
Because our intention is to respect you.
That's right. That's right. It's the only way to,
like that.
It's the only way to deal with the sort of multicultural aspect of what we have in America. The big melting pot thing is, you're not going to know where everybody's coming from. And sometimes you're going to have to ask them, hey, you got to educate me. You got to tell me how to talk to you, you know, and then I'll do it. And, you know, and all of us kind of make those kind of demands. This is no like weird, unusual thing. It's just when somebody's, you know, all pissed off, it gets contentious, you know, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Good times.
Yep. Oh, and I also wanted to just briefly tell you that I inserted one of your favorite things to say into the newsletter that's coming out in my community. It is, life is hard, be kind. Boom.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing it.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome. I always love it when Adria calls. All right. We have one more call in the queue. We're going to pick it up right now. Hello. You are on.
Okay. I think I got rid of
Hey, Chris. Good to talk to you. You know, I just wanted to talk about the previous subject about Biden's vaccination mandate.
Yeah.
So we elect presidents to make hard decisions.
Yep.
That's what we do. We elect them to make hard decisions. And I don't think that he wanted to make that decision, but he felt he had no choice.
That's right.
There is no guarantee that this virus will not further mutate into becoming something like we've all seen in the movies.
Yep.
Right.
You know, some days when I'm down, I start to think, man, am I witnessing the beginning of something really terrible, even more terrible than it's already been?
Yep.
So, you know, you can try to ask people to do the right thing, but when they won't, and they're hurting national security and society, you got to take action.
That's right.
Exactly.
You're absolutely
and it's
right.
not it's not an unprecedented thing either. I mean, we've had the draft in the past, and I know that's a subject in and of itself, but that's a time where we've literally compelled people to go to war.
That's right.
For this country.
That's right.
And here we're dealing with an enemy that's here, and it's killing people. And the last point I'll make is that I think the Republicans have very much hurt their credibility by denying basic facts, such as Trump lost the election.
Yeah.
They have no credibility.
I find myself having a harder and harder time believing Republicans now. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, they destroyed their credibility.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, Ronald Reagan wasn't perfect, but I think he's rolling in his grave. I mean, the patriotic thing to have done would have been to acknowledge the election, say you lost, and, circle the wagons and revamp. But they're trying to live in a post-truth world. And I've seen a comment here on this channel about how, we don't know who to trust anymore. And I think there's some confusion about that. The media leans in particular directions. Yeah, you got MSNBC leans pretty left.
Yep.
You have CNN that leans a bit left, and you have Fox News that leans right.
Yep.
But leaning, at least when it comes to news, doesn't mean that they're inventing facts out of whole cloth, which is what Trump has tried to do. He's behaved like a dictator. So I think they have no credibility, and I think part of this is their own inability to deal with reality. They don't want to believe that COVID is real. They don't want to believe that it's getting in the way of their almighty dollar, and they can't handle it. So they're pretending it doesn't exist, as we're seeing in Florida.
Yeah, I definitely am seeing signs of that. That is for sure. All right, well, thank you very much for calling in and sharing.
Absolutely. And I'll say one more thing, Chris.
Yeah.
The most important thing that we need to consider regarding COVID and why, we need to take it seriously is if it continues to go on, COB's hip hip hooray events are going to be interrupted. They're going to be affected more than they already have, and we can't have that in this society.
Very good point. Very good point. Okay, man. Thank you for that.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
All right. Bye-bye. All
Bye.
right. Cool deal. Yeah, we got issues. Blah, blah, blah. I know. Yeah, for sure. People have asked, by the way, I'm going to throw this out a few times. I'm going to keep mentioning this when it comes up, is that people go, who's your go-to media source? Is it MSNBC? Is it CNN? Is it this? Is it that?
Nope.
You shouldn't have a go-to media source.
Yeah.
You really need to have a panoply, a cornucopia of news sources, of media information places.
Yeah.
Because there isn't any one source where you're going to get nothing but unadulterated objective truth. That just doesn't exist. I don't know that it ever has, but it certainly doesn't exist now. For that, we can be absolutely sure.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and there are also media outlets that aren't just ideologically positioned, but there are also media outlets that specialize in certain sectors of news.
Yeah.
And you can rely on them or look to them for more informed news reporting on certain things. The BBC, for example, I'm told is amazingly good at foreign issues, not so great at domestic issues when it comes to reporting on what's going on in England. That's a reductionist little criticism, but I'm just saying, as an idea, you could look to the BBC for foreign information and find out kind of what's going on over in India or Russia, something like that.
Use a different source for local.
Exactly. And that's just one stupid example. I mean, that's not even a hill I'm going to die on, the BBC. I'm just saying that you should have an array of news sources, and there shouldn't be any one that you're relying on more than others. It's a bit of a trick question, and you should have a wider range of data in terms of being a good critical thinker. I think that's really important. All right. So, wow, we're a little bit over, so we're going to start wrapping up. So I'm going to consult my agenda here. Did we check in with Seven for the third time? Did. So there he is.
Aww.
Kind of looking similar to the first two, but there he is, our little bundle of furry joy. Seven the Wonder Cat. So checking in one last time with him. And
rubbing his little face.
There you go. Yes, one track mind. Yes, that's right. Okay. Anybody can call in. I really wish you guys would. I would love to have a discussion about that stuff. Okay, let us. However, we're done calling in today. We're not taking any more calls today. So we are going to do our critical thinking cards as always. Mel, please.
Spotlight effects.
All right, spotlight effect. This is a cognitive bias. Your bias is spotlight effect. You overestimate how much people notice how you look and act. You overestimate how much people notice how you look and act. Instead of worrying about how you're being judged, consider how you're making others feel. They'll notice this much more, and you'll also be making the world a better place. In other words,
I like that.
It's not all about you.
Right. Most people are thinking about themselves.
All the time. All the time. It's our default state. And considering that we're, little meat bodies, little meat puppets, roaming through the wild jungle here, it makes sense that we would be kind of obsessed with our own survival. But as Adria called in earlier asking about this really angry guy, it's not all about him. It's not all about us. But by acknowledging that there's a problem, you kind of get that off the table, and then you can continue in a more neutral place and all of that. Hey, Alex, thank you very much for that super chat just coming in. Many European newspapers have sections in English like Spiegel, DW, France 24, etc., and many more. Americans can and should look more into that for international information. I will totally back up and endorse what Alex just wrote in the comments there, because having looked at Spiegel, having looked at France 24 and watched, hours of that media, it is incredibly more informative than most American media in terms of what's going on in the big wide world. You're going to see stuff on France 24 you don't even hear about over here. Doesn't get reported on. Believe it or not, and this might be a secret, so we might want to keep this amongst ourselves, but believe it or not, there are all kinds of things that happen in the world that nobody reports on here.
Exactly.
It's true. So anyway, just something we might want to keep our eyes on. All right. And with that, we are going to wrap up. I have I want to let you guys know I have a podcast this week is more on Christian apologetics. For those of you who were excited by that show a couple weeks ago that I did with Stephen Tiger, we did another one. And so tomorrow there will be a whole more breakdown, more deconstruction of Christian apologetics, which is a subject I'm kind of enjoying tackling and talking about, because I find it absolutely fascinating how people intellectually go to where they go and what they do to rationalize faith. Because my point of view with faith, and I think it's maybe not, I don't know, I don't see other atheists particularly say this out loud, but, I don't have a problem with faith. I don't care if you got a belief. I don't care. What's it to me, right? But I find the psychology of how that belief is rationalized or justified, and the lengths that people will go to. Oh my God. I mean, intelligent design, etc. I mean, it's fascinating. So anyway, so that podcast is tomorrow, and then Q&A as usual on Sunday, guys. All right. Thank you very much for joining us this week. We had fun. I think we had a good time.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
Night.
Bye-bye.